your busy schedule to join us for the first technical working group meeting. And before we begin, I would like to briefly explain today's agenda. Oops. So today we have two main presentation. The first presentation will cover the proposed general structure for technical working group work. And we have sent the inception report by the email, and we kindly ask you to provide your feedback by May 12th. And based on your feedback, we will start to develop the baseline report. And if you have any idea about the additional themes or we should include or as aspect we should emphasize, please feel free to share them with us. And the second presentation, the summarize the input we received from the technical working group members. And we believe this presentation will be a good opportunity to align our thoughts and ideas. And we will briefly explain our operational modality for how we plan to manage the technical working group meeting going forward. And after each presentation, there will be a QA session to clarify the content of the respective presentation. And following both presentation, we will move into a general discussion. And you're welcome to leave your question in chat box or raise your hand to ask directly. And as you mentioned earlier, the meeting will be recorded, and the recording, along with the summary of the main point of discuss today, will be shared with all members after the meeting. And please also notice that we will have a group photo session at the end of the meeting. So this is general introduction of the meeting. And before we officially start our meeting, we have a new members joining the technical working group today. So Malu, could you please briefly introduce yourself?
Okay, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. So I am from the Philippines. I work with the government, the Cooperative Development Authority, who takes charge of the development and regulation of cooperatives in the Philippines. I am the Deputy Administrator for Registration, Supervision, and Examination Service. I've been with the CDA for 2 decades. So that would be all.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. And so before we proceed our first presentation, is there anyone who want to have something to share with us? It seems I cannot see any hand raised. So then let's move on to our first presentation. Olivier, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks. Hello, everyone. Actually, it's also my first meeting for the technical working group, so I'm just going to introduce myself briefly. I'm Olivier Frère, I'm a consultant, independent consultant, and I've been working on co-ops for 20 years now. I'm specialized in farmer co-ops, and I did a PhD on the way the farmer co-ops do territorial anchoring, the way they work for their territory. And I'm the lead author on this measuring the economic contribution of co-ops. So I'm just going to present briefly today. It's a short presentation that will walk you through the proposals and directions outlined in the report. So I won't go into too deep in the context or the background, because you all know the background of this mission, of this study. So the idea is really to briefly present you the structure of the mission, what is expected of the technical working group, and some definitions that we have to agree on. So first I'm gonna, what's the problem here? Okay, so why do we have to measure the economic contribution? Sorry. So cooperatives are key socio-economic actors, yet their contribution remains largely invisible in official statistics. So basically, cooperatives are present in almost all sectors, but they are still very poorly captured in economic data. So the idea is to fix that with this mission. And the idea is to measure the contribution because it will enable better policy support, integration into official statistics, and benchmarking across countries. So the measurement is going to provide evidence for the recognition in policy frameworks, integration into national accounts, and some global comparability and benchmarking. And it will also inform better resource allocation and policy design. So in order to all be aware of what we mean by economic contribution, and especially for co-ops, the idea is that it's not a simple definition, meaning that actually the economic contribution is understood as a layered concept comprising of a core dimension. There's an expanded interpretation and a spectrum of associated impacts that are increasingly relevant in contemporary statistical and policy frameworks. So the economic contribution of co-ops isn't limited to just the output or the employment of co-ops. And we propose some kind of broader view with direct and indirect effects, that is with social and territorial value creation that are added also to that. So we can adopt some kind of comprehensive definition that includes the direct contribution to output and employment, the indirect and induced effects, the fiscal contribution, the capital mobilization, the contribution to social and inclusion, and the impact on territorial development. And there's also the promotion of sustainability. So the idea is really to have a broader definition of what the economic contribution of co-ops is. And we have to all share this vision of the definition of economic contribution, because it's the starting point really of the mission. So what are the key goals of the technical working group? So we aim to clarify actually what we mean here by economic contribution, to determine which indicators we can use, and propose some kind of flexible methodology that countries can adopt based on their capacities. So the idea is to have the conceptual clarification, the indicators and data mapping, and then some kind of methodological proposal to develop a practical and flexible measurement framework suitable for all the countries. But first we have to agree on some definitions. So first, what is a co-op actually? So I'm using the definition that is given by the ILO, which means that a co-op is an autonomous association of persons united voluntarily to meet their common economic, social, and cultural needs and aspirations through a jointly owned and democratically controlled enterprise. And they're based on the 7 core principles that are voluntary and open membership, democratic member control, which means 1 member, 1 vote, the member economic participation, the autonomy and independence, education, training, and information, cooperation among co-ops, and concern for community. So this is really the definition of cooperative we have to agree on. And there are also some operational criteria for the identification of co-ops that have been specified in the ILO guidelines. So first, it's a formally established institutional unit, which means the co-op should be a formally established institutional unit, either a non-financial co-op, financial corporation, or non-profit institution. There should be a democratic member control. That's what we said before. The co-op should be controlled democratically by its members according to the principle that each one has an equal vote. Either they have a big share, a big amount of social capital or not. There's the voluntary and open membership. So membership should be voluntary and non-restrictive. And it's also the way that you can enter a co-op freely, but you can also come out of the co-op freely. You can ask to get out of the co-op. There's the surplus distribution that is not linked to capital. This is the big difference with the private companies, meaning that in co-ops, the distribution of profits or surpluses among the members is linked to the activity each member has done with the co-ops during the year, and not on the amount of share or capital that he or she has. And any enterprise that does not meet each of these criteria should not be defined as a co-op for statistical purposes. So there's also typologies of co-ops to include. So there are different types of cooperatives. We can see 3 types by function or purpose. So there's the producer co-ops, the worker co-ops, consumer co-ops, and multi-stakeholder co-ops. There's also by sectors, agriculture, finance, healthcare, retail, and also by legal status, whether they are registered or not, whether they are formal or informal, or even hybrid models. So this is also some kind of typo that is used by the ILO. We already have the classification for the sectors, for example, the easy CONAS, and we have to rely actually on those classification because they are the agreed classification used by the national institutions. And the guidelines specify that unregistered co-ops should be identified separately. And they recognize that in some instances, enterprises may operate in a similar way to co-ops without being registered formally as co-ops. And that's why we talk also about informal co-ops. So there are several indicators under consideration. Many of them already exist, but they are often dispersed or inconstantly collected. And the key task of the technical working group and the mission will be to agree on a core set of indicators that are realistic, harmonized, and meaningful. Some of them, this is just a list, but there are many indicators. We have what we could call the economic indicators, which are the turnover, the gross value added, the investment capital formation. We have labor indicators, which are usually the number of workers and members, the type of employment, the volunteer work. We have fiscal indicators, the amount of taxes paid by the co-ops and the social contributions they have. And we have also social indicators regarding inclusion, sustainability, and territorial resilience. And of course, there are limitations and gaps. And that's why we are here, because the limitation, this fragmentation and inconsistency, meaning the data is scattered across different sources. There are ministries, federation, NSOs, and different definitions in the different countries, which means different definitions and scopes. There's some kind of invisibility in standard classifications because co-ops are not always tagged in business or labor surveys. They're not easily identifiable in EasyConMass unless there's a specific coding that is used. There's also the exclusion of informal or unregistered co-ops, especially in rural areas, women's groups, youth initiatives. And this leads to an underestimation of the real co-op footprint. And there's limited social environmental metrics because most systems still focus actually on economic and financial indicators. And there's a need for broader impact indicators like job quality, equity, or sustainability. So the idea is to have a mixed methods and modular framework with administrative sources like co-op registries, tax records, social protection databases. The idea is to use both quantitative and qualitative sources. Actually, it should work for countries with varying levels of data availability and allow the integration into existing systems. And the idea is really to capture the full range of co-op contributions because the project has to adopt some kind of flexible, pragmatic, and multi-source methodology. We have statistical surveys, federation data, qualitative tools, and of course, all of those have to be integrated with SNA extension and SSE frameworks. So what is the role of the technical working group? So the report outlines actually the next priorities for the technical working group. The idea is to validate key indicators and conceptual definitions, provide feedback on methodological options to support the coordination with other international frameworks and contribute to peer learning and country-level adaptation. And you have to bear in mind that this is a participatory process, and the contribution of each and every one of you will be vital for the success of the mission. So that's why we expect from you some feedback on the inception report first, and then we're going to work on the baseline report. So to conclude, the inception report actually sets a solid foundation. The technical working group will lead the next phase of technical refinement. And the idea is to build together a framework that makes the role of co-ops visible, measurable, and valued. And the challenge we have is to make visible the economic and social value of co-ops globally. So that, I'm done.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation to Olivier. And there's one comment from the chat box, and Fiona mentioned that do we want to include for-profit and non-profit status in topology? So
Sorry, let me see. I don't understand that there was a problem with your sound.
Sorry, did you want me to speak to that,
Yeah.
Anna?
yes,
Okay.
Aina, yeah, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Olivier. I was just thinking of in that slide that you had the different typologies where you talked about the different types of co-ops, then the different sectors, and then the different like the formal nature of them or a more informal nature. I just wondered if you wanted to have another part that differentiated between for-profit types of co-ops and then non-profit types of co-ops. That's just my that was just my comment.
Actually, if we all agree to differentiate between for-profit and non-profit, we can also add this, but maybe in the third legal status.
Yeah, just to second that, there can
Yeah.
be different legal frameworks. So for instance, in the UK, you have community benefit societies and then you have cooperatives. So there might be different versions of that. So maybe Fiona's comment makes sense to kind of consider and incorporate in the definition, if that makes sense. But it varies across the globe.
Yeah, that's the problem we have. It's different countries with different definition, and even the different laws regarding co-op. It's that's why it's all complicated. But for sure, we can take a look at for-profit and and non-profit. And it's also the way to have a look at employment or volunteer work as well.
I think Mary can answer this part.
Mary,
I
do
just
you-
wanted
yeah.
I just wanted to mention in the chat that this is already distinguished in the SNA, the Systems of National Accounts.
Mhm.
So it's I think what we're looking for is also what do we need that the SNA doesn't have, or what do we need to measure the economic contribution of cooperatives that show for their different economic model, for which the SNA, the standard ways of measuring, may not be adequate, or for which using a standard indicator may not give the adequate picture of the co-op. So we do have this typology already existing in the SNA, distinguishing some cooperatives acting in a nonprofit manner, and they are considered as nonprofit institutions in that case. But they're still co-ops.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary, for your kind answer. And as I mentioned, this inception report and this presentation is provide preliminarily the general structure of the work of the technical working group. So is there anyone who have a more comment or input for this part? Oh, yes, Mary. Go ahead, please.
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Olivier, for this work. You did a big report. I read the report, and I'll have more specific comments on it. But maybe a few comments to complement or to add to what I just mentioned. We do have to think of the possibility that standard indicators not picture the cooperative well. Madeg can also speak to this because he wrote a report with us on this issue. And maybe this could be part of the discussion we should have. What standard indicators may not give the adequate picture, either showing too little contribution for what it actually means, or either not showing for what the cooperative can do in an economy. Cooperatives are still a relatively marginal player in the market economy, depending on the sector and depending on the country. But what can we add to what already exists so that we can suggest new either norms or indicators? I'll just mention one and see, if you can react to this one. Value added is mentioned very often in the report, and we suggested that the typology of cooperatives that was proposed by the ILO helps identify where the value goes inside a cooperative economic model. If your member is upstream of the cooperative, part of the value added will be going to that member as the producer is selling his good through the cooperatives, and the cooperative will give the producer back some patronage refund. If the member is upstream of the cooperative model, the consumer is getting a better price or getting a refund. So part of the value added is distributed to the member. So that issue should be addressed in how does the SNA provide a manner to adequately show how the value added is produced and distributed in a cooperative. So that is one of the questions we were asking a few years ago, and I think there may be others that this group could help identify.
Yeah, thank you, Mary. The report that you work on with Madec, the Statistics on Cooperative, is definitely going our kind of starting point when we build on our discussion. That the work we have done is going to be our start point. And Malu, do you have any comment on this? I saw that your hand raised.
Yeah, partly I agree with Marie on her point, and maybe more than just the value added measure. So maybe we could also look into the additional income brought to the household by because of membership in a cooperative, if that would be proper inclusion in our discussions. So because more than just the patronage refund or other returns to the members, it will also be good to consider maybe because the prices have been lowered because of the intervention of the cooperatives. So this would also mean lesser expense on the part of the members. So maybe we could also look into that.
Yeah, thank you, Malu. Yeah, that is the point when we look into the value added regarding the economic contribution of the cooperative. Thank you. And before
Can I have another?
Yeah, yes, please.
Since we are into measuring the economic contribution, can we also factor in the extent of members of cooperatives in particular country or in a particular location as against the population or the working population of that locality or of that place?
For this, there's the problem of dual membership, actually. Especially for co-op banks, for example. You can be a member of a co-op bank and a member of farmers co-op, and it's complicated.
Yes, that could be a challenge along that line.
Yeah, it's very challenging to monitor that.
Yeah.
But the idea, I mean, one of the proposal was to include maybe in the census, the annual census is about households. If maybe one question, are you a member of any type of co-ops or any co-op? This was one proposal.
Yeah, thank you. And I have actually, David, do you raise your hand or?
Yeah, I was trying to raise my hand. I can't.
Sorry,
find
so I can't say so.
I can't find a button to allow me to raise it, so I raised a real hand.
Okay. Please go ahead, David.
Yeah, I also thought I've had time to read the report from Olivier this morning and thought it covered things quite well. There were a couple of issues, most of which I'll address directly in writing, but I think just in relevant with respect to this discussion about the source of information on cooperatives and the use of household surveys. I think labour force surveys can be an important source of data, but the problem is whether the respondent knows that a member of the family's employer is a cooperative, and
that's
fairly rough and ready. So I don't think that household surveys are necessarily the best source of data for details on employment in cooperatives. But if we want to know about the household characteristics of people who work in cooperatives or people who are members of cooperatives, then it would still be important to try to identify membership of cooperatives and employment in cooperatives in household surveys, despite the limitations on accuracy for the identification of cooperatives. So I think that's an important point that perhaps could be brought out a little bit more strongly in the paper. And I think in discussing things, we need to bear in mind, because yes, household surveys are an important source of data, but the accuracy of identification of cooperatives and employment in cooperatives in particular in household surveys may be quite difficult. quite limited.
You're good.
Okay. So I can see 3 hands are raised. So Fatih, could you go first?
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Fatih. I work for Ministry of Trade in Republic of Turkey. I just wanted to add that during our studies, Turkey was a pilot country regarding the ILO guidelines, cooperative statistics, and we encountered that almost all of the economic topics that measure companies' performances, they regard classical companies. All of them thinks that there's a company that had a capital invested, it had costs and sales, and the profit of margin in several ways it was measured. So it captures the company's performance about fiscal year or assets, etc. But none of them were non-problematic for cooperatives. For example, Mary also said the economic value added completely collapses for building cooperatives, for agricultural cooperatives. And also there are many parts that are not shown in balance sheets or quarterly reports that are developed for classical companies. Almost all of them collapses for cooperative about taking the picture of the performance for a single cooperative. And consequently, when we collect those data about cooperatives with the measures were initially created for classical companies, we were missing the biggest chunk of cooperatives if we are talking about economic contribution. So I just wanted to agree with Mary. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your experience during your pilot study in Turkey. And Carlos and Elizabeth, so I can see your hand raised. So Carlos, could you? Yeah.
Was it
Carlos?
Jordan? Jordan raised
Jordan.
hand.
Okay. Sorry. Jordan, could you go first?
Sure, yeah. Hi everyone. Sorry it's 8:30 a.m. on Monday, so I haven't had a chance to
Oh.
read so much so far, but just trying to think through this question of data. I mean, I'm an economist, so of course I would love to have as much data as we have available, right? But I guess my question is, what data do we have available to work with? I guess I'm trying to think about this from a couple of different perspectives. So, I've done a lot of research on credit unions, so financial cooperatives in the US, and we're very blessed to have a lot of data available, which is really great and allows us to do a lot of really great research looking at, I think, what we want to do here, both sort of the total size and impact, economic impact, value added. But then also, I think another important question, I don't know if we're able to get to this where we want to get to this, but what is the distinct contribution of cooperatives compared to other forms of organization? And that goes a bit deeper because probably you want to look beyond just like the number of employees, for example, right? Because when I compare credit unions and banks, they both have a number of employees. You can look at the total impact and it's not so different, right? But when you get into things like the interest rates that they charge or the salaries that they pay or the longevity of employment or the amount of compensation that's tied to performance versus stable, then you can really see a very distinct contribution from cooperatives compared to for-profit banks, for example, in this case, that have shareholders and everything. But that data, it's a lot harder to come by, right? So I guess that's a big question I have, like, what is the data that we have available? you know, I think it's going to be probably a little tricky because, as we mentioned, there are many different definitions, different countries, different sectors we're working with, even in the US, to be honest. My friends in the other co-op sectors are very jealous of us in finance, right? Because we have so much more data available, and even they struggle a lot to get sort of existing data to be able to look at some of these questions. So I guess, yeah, the question then is, you know, what data do we have available, if we can answer that question? And then two, you know, if we don't have the data that we want, are we able to get additional data, and how? Is it through surveys or doing some kind of economic impacts analysis, input-output analysis, something like that? I guess those would be my questions.
Okay. And in the Olivier's initial report, he also mentioned that we need to consider fair wage or fair distribution when we measure the economic contribution of the cooperative. So, Olivier, do you have any comments on this?
How much data do we have? We don't have exhaustive data, that's for sure. We have data in the registries, we have data in the co-op federations, but I don't have any idea country per country which data is available at the moment. I don't know if anyone has an idea about that. Maybe Jonsik has. I see Jonsik raising the head. No, actually,
I see Jonsik also waving like this.
Yeah. I don't think anyone at the moment has an idea about which data is really available at the moment. If you consider the co-ops globally, country per country, in some big countries, OECD countries, we might refine and say, okay, this is the kind of data we can get. Maybe in the UK, in Spain, or France, or in the US, we could gather. But I really don't know if this job is doable, actually, checking for data everywhere.
I think in this context, it's important to understand that one of the things that we're trying to do is identify the key pieces of information that we currently can't get, but that we could get if they were regularly included in economic surveys, in labour force surveys conducted by national statistical officers, or in other data sources, administrative sources. So what are the key things that we really need to try to measure? And bear in mind, this is going for endorsement by the International Conference of Labour Statisticians, which is the agency that sets international standards for labour statistics. So if that conference decides that something should be included regularly, then it's down to national statistical officers or other agencies nationally producing statistics to go ahead and find out a way of incorporating those things into their statistics. It doesn't mean that we can define 1,000 things that we think should be collected. We need to prioritize the very important things. And that can be collected in a wide range of different types of country.
Maybe
Thank you, Deb. Yes, yeah, go ahead, please. Yeah.
Experience and that, I think, great idea. Because even in the US, you know, for the longest time, the census didn't collect information on which organization is a cooperative and which isn't. Among all of the data that it collected, it was actually here at the UW Center for Cooperatives. Some of you might know Brent Hewitt. Really, he was the director here for a while, and he led that effort to have that question added to the census, basically for each establishment. Do you consider yourself to be a cooperative? Maybe it's still not the strictest of definitions, but at least that helped us get a sense as to sort of the size of the industry and the count and the magnitude. So that might be one thing, is just really a very basic starting point in each country. If that could sort of be added to the national statistics, I imagine that would be very helpful.
Yeah, thank you. And we also have a 5-country pilot study for regarding the implementing the guideline of cooperative statistics, and it could be a good reference as well. And Carlos, I had one hand raised. Yeah, Carlos, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Nawan. I just wanted to agree with David. I think our main task here is to analyze how we want to measure the economic contribution of co-ops, and not to measure it right now. We just need to say how we want to do it. Through explaining how, then we'll figure out which variables we need all the countries to gather, so we're able to actually measure. So I think that that's the key aspect, defining how we want to measure it. So then we can identify which variables countries need to start gathering through registries, censuses, etc.
Yeah, thank you, Carlos. Yeah, the main object of this technical working group is to let the national statisticians know that the need that we need to develop the indicator to measure economic contribution of cooperative. Yeah, I think that is well aligned with our mission of the technical working group. So I also see hand raised Mary. Mary, could you have a comment? Further comment?
Yes, thank you, Nawan. Maybe I can give a few examples. When we say, for example, that cooperatives help stabilizing local economies, how do we, what data do we need to show for that? And depending on the methodology, whether it's a co-op survey or a business survey, or so all of this needs to be developed. Where do we get this information? But for example, if we localize the cooperative in its region, geographically, what type of region is that? What type of local environment is that? We can use the Gini index of inequality. We can use regional vitality indexes that exist in different data sets. We can look sector per sector of activity. Is the cooperative substituting or replacing what would be otherwise an international marketing intermediary? I'm thinking of the woman selling argan oil in Morocco, which reaches us everywhere in the world, but it's not a multinational grabbing the value added. So if we look at what a cooperative is supposed to do, we all agree that it does it, but how can we show it with statistics? I think that's the way we can start looking at what index and what indicators do we want to focus on. And as David said, we cannot have a multitude of new indicators. We need to try to identify what does the cooperative do? What does the cooperative do? What do cooperatives do that the statistics don't show? Or what is the worth of cooperatives that the statistics don't show adequately? And then choose what is important, most important. And one of the factor needs to be feasibility. If it's unfeasible, it might be very good, but it needs to be feasible. National statistical offices will say, sorry, I don't have the money to do this. We can't have access to this.
Right. Thank you, Mary. And as a matter of time management, after Fatih's comment, I hope we move on to next presentation. And please, if you have any other issue or comment on this, please bear in mind that we have a general discussion session after Hyungsik's presentation. So Fatih, please go ahead your comment or question.
Thank you again. I'd like to add a simple but a fundamental point. In the guidelines, there was a nice section mentioning that there are already national economical statistics in every country. If you could filter out the cooperatives in those statistics, then you could get some idea, some data about the economic contribution of cooperatives. But the thing is, we filtered out cooperatives from those data, but those economic statistics were mainly gathered from financial reports of companies, like balance sheets, income tables, etc. And again, I think the fundamental problem lies here. Maybe we need another framework for accounting standards for cooperatives or financial reporting standards. Not entirely new, but specialized, especially for cooperatives, according to cooperative types, maybe. Like when you visit the SAC site, United States SAC, there are different financial reporting standards for banks, financial institutions, technological institutions, etc. Because they have some aspects differentiating them from other types of companies. So they try to take that picture of the company differently. Maybe we need another financial reporting standard to tabulate the economic data of the cooperatives. Because right now, when I want to invest in a company, no matter in which part of the world, I can see the performance of the company according to those standardized accounting principles, financial reporting standards. And we also encountered this need when we were regulating an external audit system for cooperatives. Turnovers, net sales, gross profits, economic value added were not enough to filter out the cooperatives that were needed an external audit mandatorily. So we added extra criteria like partnership number, like its type, economical sector, etc. But still, that wasn't enough. So I think if we could lean on financial reporting side of the cooperatives, maybe we can come up with a new perspective that could measure cooperatives accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think the unique model for the unique financial reporting model for cooperative will gonna be one of issue we want to look in the future. And as a matter of time management, I hope to move on to our next presentation. So Hyung-sik, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So I will share the screen. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you for attending this today meeting, and also particularly thank you for your contribution to this member input form. We collected very interesting and very useful information and insight from you. And I tried to summarize those things to really help our work. First of all, based on the discussion we had now, I would like to clarify 2 points about contextualize our work, because first of all, probably you start understanding what you are doing, because when I started this technical working group in previous mandate, the same for me, for difficult to understand, what really we are working for. So I would like to just check 2 points. One is that this technical working group is aiming at producing specific topic about measuring economic contribution of cooperatives, which will be part of the broader frame we call the manual, which will be a manual for the cooperative statistics. So there will be different parts on the different topics, mainly from the guidelines, but also from this working group. So this manual, which we hope to be adopted by the International Conference of Labor Statisticians, will be kind of international standard. So when we make something, it will be something very important, and every national statistics office needs to consider. So this is we state all difficulties, problems we have, but with this work, we probably have can a little bit improve the situation and put some really important idea in the more standard setting at the international level. That is one thing. So when you propose something, it's not just just not only discussion. It's really making something changed. Second thing is that we already have some basis. So although some of you are not familiar with the previous work, we already have the definition about cooperatives from the ICA, ILO, and also we had the guideline which cover quite broader the scope of the issues, and some the supporting document to produce this guideline, which have also very important element. And then we need to develop something which were missing. So that so when we sometimes probably David and Mary when they mention about the previous work, I think it's also important for you to when you have time to read those things, because we need to be based on what we already done. So that's what I wanted to clarify. Briefly, from your input, I identify 3 topics, but will be very brief for the challenges, because we already know all challenges: diversity, shortage of the information, difficulty of the collecting data, etc. I just skip this slide. So what we need to discuss to really elaborate the good logic and also the argument and evidence for the measuring the economic contribution of cooperatives. First of all, we need to probably clarify what real economic contribution means. That many members raised the issue, we need to clarify this point from the beginning. And what they propose is, I structured their propositions in 3 levels, because when we talk about economic contribution, I realized that we are talking about 3 different levels. One is that organizational level, as enterprise, cooperatives, or as also association, we have the different economic dimension we need to explore. But also there is an economic dimension of the members. So how cooperatives contribute to members' well-being or their production or the economic activity. So the contribution is not necessarily at the organizational level, but we can also measure all these economic dimension of members from which they benefit for their life or other things. And also we are also very interested to know about the economic contribution at the community or social society level. So how we can aggregate all these things to show the impact or the weights of cooperatives. And also economic contribution is not totally separate, because with the economic impact contribution, you can make impact on other dimensions which are not necessarily economic or material. So this is one of the core the theme we need to work. And so for this, we need to identify, because one thing I also wanted to remind is that our target, actually, our audience will be national statistic offices, which will adopt or not our proposal at the International Conference of the Labor Sessions. So it means that we need to use their language, their system, and then so we need to identify what is the relevance or problem in traditional statistical frameworks, like the labor survey, satellite account, national account, or the business register, etc., etc. All these already the statistical frameworks have something, but how we can really put the specificity of the cooperatives in this system, and if not, how we can improve the system to reflect. That's a very important point. So we need to review all these existing frameworks and to analyze them from this angle. And also, as already discussed, many members raised the issue about to have clear information about the economic contribution, we need to have a very good, very accurate the balance sheet or the accounting information. So I think it might, because we know that we have already experts on the accounting in this group, we might consider a possible subgroup to really discuss on this to complement our discussion, because it's also very technical work. So it might be interesting to consider these options. And from the term of reference, we clarified that the main theme is that economic contribution. So, but many people already mixed sometimes, between economic contribution and non-economic impact, like social, cultural, environmental impact. So, for the how say that more pragmatical point of view, we wanted to concentrate on economic contribution, which is different from non-economic dimension. But we will examine this part in relation to the economic contribution. So that's we need to do a certain point. But I wanted to emphasize that it should be differently distinct, more for the analytical region. If we mix everything, it's very difficult to move forward. So that's the point raised. And many members raised the general issues like definition of cooperatives, diversity, legal form, classification issue, etc., etc. I would like to invite you to first of all the review the guidelines, which cover actually many parts of this work. Probably you might not be happy with the guidelines, but guidelines is our first, the base. So if you think guidelines need to be modified or whatever, we can discuss at a certain point. But all these topics with the outside economic contribution, we propose to a little bit, first review all these things, and we might have probably time to review together. But it's not our main part. Particularly issue with the informal organizations. We also have the technical working group on SSE, which will focus more on this topic as well. So we can also get some input from that technical working group. Oops. And many members also raised the considerations in more practical point of view, the balancing diversity in because if you consider diversity, you cannot make any international comparability. If we go only for the international comparability, we can probably ignore diversity. So we need to find some good balance, and also we need to consider the cost feasibility policy importance, which really make or not cooperatives statistics feasible. And also we need to consider very important existing framework like SNA or MPI settler account, because our work should be articulate with this framework, not just independent element. So this will be also challenge for us. So operational modality, many members raised many suggestions or some concerns. So we try to answer your concerns. So we want to, according to your the suggestions, we think it's better to have more clear schedule from the beginning, and also clear the thematic lines for each meetings. So this is just proposal for you, and probably we will have the 2 meetings before summer, and in September 1 more, and we will have the deep dive meeting in October, and after deep diving we might have 3 meetings. So, and in between there will be 2 panel sessions at the research conference to present what we are doing. So also we need to disseminate our discussion and raise the issue and take more attention from outside. So that's more or less schedule. So we will make the doodle to identify the date for the first 2 meetings. So then we might have more clear idea about the calendar for at least until the summer. And in terms of the thematic discussion, it's the proposal. So we can discuss. Also, you can make some feedback after that. We will decide with your feedback. So each meeting, we can organize 2 sessions. One is about thematic discussion. The other is more to share case study or the best practice. And in terms of the thematic discussion, according to the structure of the inception report, we may start by economic contribution. What is the economic contribution? Definition or the scope, etc. And then you can go to next meeting, the category or indicator in existing statistical frameworks to understand, what are the current situation. And also we need to deal with the SNA, which is now the updated and which is very strong tool in the statistics. So we need to also understand, also we make some connection with this existing tool. And after that, we can data collection method issue and non-economic impact issues might be discussed. So that's just the idea. In terms of case study, for example, we are considering, because we should be based on what we have done. Probably we might start by examining previous work. Like we have already the Madek here, who was part of that research on the economic contribution. So you might invite him to share what already done and the problematic and issues there. And probably we might also in another meeting, because many of us are not from the statistic office, so we might invite someone from the National Statistic Office about how they work, what is the the statistical the frameworks they use, what might be interesting tools, etc. And the example of certificate account, and also the ministries, how do you work, to collect data, what's the issue. So, but this is still, the very brief idea. We can modify based on the propositions. And finally, in terms of the work process, this time we could not really respect all the timing, but we tried to keep the dynamic, like 1 week before we will share the material meeting link, and after meeting we will share all the video recording and the update material, and also do the survey for next meeting. And we would request you to submit your feedback on the meeting. So in this kind of the process might be more routinized to help you, also us, to more be productive. And finally, we try to now make more platform-based communication among us. So because we plan to make kind of the online platform for the community of practice, which will include also the many other experts, not only the 2 working group members, but also broader experts, to also feed the work about the manual, as we said. But it takes time. So in meantime, we will try to make shared drive and mailing list to share the document. Also try to find some way you can communicate each other directly to have some dynamics. And there are some ideas to be considered, but it's not the actuality, but you can just have some idea. And if you have another proposition, more concrete, for example, you wanted to develop any academic work based on our discussion, just let us know. You can try to make very good the collective contribution to help you and make good dissemination. Yeah, so etc. etc. So we are very open to this kind of idea when you have any more the concrete initiatives. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Hyung-Sik, for putting together inputs from the members and the kind of explanation for operational modality. So is there any comment on our time frame or some issues that Hyung-Sik now present? So I cannot see any hand raised. So
What was too much clear or was confusing?
So So at Hyungsik's presentation, Hyungsik proposed kind of the general timeline, rough timeline for our second or third meeting. So is there any issue with Doodle to save our meeting day with the schedule? Is there any issues on this?
So we plan to have the next meeting end of May or early June, and the third meeting end of June or early July. So I don't know. So at certain point of the planet, they never work after July. No, I don't know. So, but this might be. We have very short term the interval. It's very heavy, but I think we will try to make to our best to the keeping the rhythm and not to give you too much the burden, but having very productive. So, and also everything will be done also through the video recording and the written feedback. So you don't need to be always too much nervous about attending the meeting. So we try to share everything with enough time.
Marie, could you please go ahead?
Thank you, Nawang. Thank you, Hyungsik, for summarizing all the concerns that we have. There's too many concerns. I don't know. I hope we will be able to see to a few of them. When we're talking about having a meeting about economic contribution, are you suggesting that for our next meeting we should have a proposal of some indicators, of some sources and some methodologies approach from which we can start discussing, or is that too early in the process? I'm wondering how we're going to benefit from all the beautiful experience that we have around the table here, around my screen at least.
My idea is that, for example, next meeting, we wanted to invite. I did not yet propose like the Madec, Damien, to, because we already did this work. So we wanted to make some, the continuation from the previous work. And also in terms of the thematic discussion, the idea is that, so each topic, each thematic discussion, we try to get some input from you. For example, economic contribution, we will, myself, I plan to ask the members about, what do you think, or what your organization consider economic contribution, and how do you work, and then how the different stakeholder framework are used to, so to how say that, collect the different point of view and experience, and we will just initiate the discussion with the collected information and facilitate this kind of the discussion during the meeting, and collect additional the input after meeting to complete that part of the work, which will be one chapter in the report we plan. That's the dynamic we think. Is it the answer to your question, or?
Well, in terms of homework, because we each come from a different side of the statistics world, what do you want us to be working on? For example, we have Olivier's report. Do you want us to comment on Olivier's report, looking more specifically at what are the issues, indicators, logical model to understand and convince? So I think we need I would need orientation.
For the as I wrote in the mail, for the inception report, it's a tool to facilitate discussion. So you can, if you want, but you don't need to put like the sentence by sentence comments. You don't need, because it will be just give some structure, what we will discuss. And in terms of the detail or information, we will deal with each, like the themes, in each meeting, and we will produce the baseline report based on this discussion. Then we will have the baseline report, which will be discussed more deeply in the deep dive meeting. So then that will be our common product. So, and then you need to make your more detailed comments on that report, not inception report now. So what we ask you at this time is that just give your thought about, whether this report is missing something or not, the general direction we need to consider, that kind of comments we need. And then it will also feed our discussion in coming meetings.
Thank you, Young-sik. And Mari, do you have any comments on this issue? Okay, thank you. And I saw that hands of Elizabeth is raised. So Elizabeth, do you have any comment, or
Yeah.
it is okay?
Yeah, one question I had about our contribution that Marie had. So I think you're gonna send us a more kind of structured questionnaire like you did last time to comment on various sections. Okay.
Right,
yeah,
right.
that's great actually. And if we could have the material a bit more in advance, that would be fantastic.
We will try to.
But yeah, well done. It's very impressive actually, the report that was put together, and looking forward to contributing to that. In terms of the idea about having an accounting related subgroup, and actually I was thinking very much about and second Fatih's comment about the importance of accounting, which is a big debate internationally. And as I've shared, there is like a motion that has passed a few years ago about developing international accounting standards, and how important it is to have this kind of assessment of the not only economic contribution in the narrow sense, but also the non-financial and the social impact, etc., etc. So I'm not gonna talk too much about the importance and what literature already says, but practically, do you like us to consider developing this subgroup anytime soon? I can only recognize Fiona from the people that might have an interest in accounting standards or performance measurements, and things like that. Is it something that you would like us to pursue individually within?
So I think also the Professor Seo Jin-sun, he's from Korea. He's also the expert on the accounting issue. And Fatih has the very concrete experience. So if you can, I'd like to propose to you or some people who want to join, having some informal meeting, and then see what you can do. So if you express, in the next feedback, the format, I will notice that. So if someone express interest, we might organize separate meeting with the accounting, the experts, to see what you can do or not. So yeah, I know that the additional work. So, but also very important issue connected to this work.
Yeah, and it really ties with the vital question of source of information and mapping what is happening internationally to some extent will be quite helpful as well. I don't know, I can get in touch with Fiona informally, and now it's a matter of capacity and things like that. But if anyone else is interested, just let me know. We can have a couple of people, a few people working additionally on that perspective, which I think will be quite valuable in the discussion.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Yeah, so if it's not too burden to work, because we might be the extra work on technical working group, but I think it is very valuable to focus on specific issue who have the expertise on that issue. So yeah, I think it's a good suggestion to form a subgroup for the financial reporting for the cooperative. Is there any other comment on this issue, on Hyung-sik's presentation? Yes, Mary, please go ahead.
Thank you. Now, when I shared it in the chat room, I'm wondering if we, in relation to what type of information we need, could we look at some questions from household surveys or business surveys or work surveys, employment surveys that could be useful or amended or deployed for the cooperative so that we go directly to the source of information. Accounting is one, but also the questionnaires from these surveys could be useful if we have access to them, of course.
Yes. The question. Yeah, I think that is also a good idea to check which survey has what kind of questions. Yeah, I think this is also a good idea. Yes, David.
David, you are muted.
You are muted, David.
I'm unmuted now. I'm sorry. I still haven't found the button on my screen to raise my hand electronically. Yeah, I think it would be useful to have a look at the existing questions from business or well, from existing surveys. But I think one of the objectives might also be to include some new questions in such surveys, especially in business surveys. But most national statistical offices will make the questionnaires that they use more or less publicly available on their websites. Not all, obviously, but for many countries, it's possible to find the questionnaires, or at least the questions that are asked. Obviously, with computer-assisted interviewing now, it's not quite as easy to follow as an old-fashioned paper questionnaire. But yes, I think it will generally be possible to find that sort of information. But the concern is that not the specific things about cooperatives would really be asked. But identification of cooperatives in statistical business registers will lead to the accessibility and availability of a lot more information that we might want. Problem in many cases is that we can't find cooperatives in the official statistics.
Yeah, thank you, David. And I cannot see any more hand raised, so I think this is
No one.
Yes,
Yeah. Related to this issue, I'd like to ask, for example, Massimo, do you think in the National Statistics Office, so there are main statistical framework like the business register, labor survey, household survey, and what do you think also the other framework we need to consider if we collect the questions, or so also the statistical account if necessary? What do you think?
Hi, we move mainly to statistical business register to get data on COPS. And even I don't know, because we are change our strategy to make census on business, on corporations. So I don't know, because there is a sample, no more a census on corporation firms, enterprises. I don't know if the accuracy of data, or I don't know if it's possible to have data by the samples specific to COPS. I don't know if the sample is so large to have to get data on COPS specifically. Of course, surely we have data from the statistical business register, and it's difficult from ISTA, for Italian Statistical Office, to get information about members of COPS by the standard household surveys. We can get information about COP members in that way.
Okay, thank you.
And if we don't have any comments, so I think this is it for the second presentation. So we have kind of around 10 more minutes. So if anyone have a general comment on today's issue or general structure or something, please feel free to share your idea or comment on.
I take the floor another time. So just, I was wondering that our task is very ambitious because the concept of economic measure of COPs is wide and large, and it seems like that we have to suggest sustainability reporting about COPs because we are not considering only economic indicators, but we are speaking about impact from the environmental impact, social impact. So it's very ambitious, our tasks, and I don't know if we can consider, for example, in the case of Europe, the standard that now are adopted for the report for the sustainability reporting disclosure. I don't know if maybe a source of information about indicators, because in that scheme and that reporting, there are a lot of indicator, quantitative and qualitative indicators. I don't know if the new disclosure suggested by you can be a source of information and to find new indicators that we can adopt to COPs too.
Thank you, Massimo. And Jinson, do you have anything to share with us or no? Okay.
I mean, yeah, we could look, or I could look also at some reporting frameworks and see what indicators are suggested, and then kind of reconcile and see what is being already used and what is not used, because I really am not sure about the variety and the number of indicators already used. So yeah, I could look into some reporting frameworks and impact kind of related in the UK or wherever I can have access and put it together and then see how they fit or they're used or not by currently, basically.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Elizabeth. If you do that, it's yeah, I think it's pretty much helpful to proceed our works. Thank you. So I can't see any more comments or in chat box or hand raised. Oh yeah, Hyung-sik.
Yeah, mine is more about the announcement for next meeting. So Mari might be.
Yeah, Mari, please go ahead, please.
Just to mention that I've put in the chat box the text that if we look at minimally some indicators that are generally used to talk about cooperatives, they're badly used because they don't take into account of the economic model of the cooperative. That could be already a strong benefit. We may also want to look at the logical model from which we can use the statistics on cooperatives to talk about the cooperative impact. So I think looking at existing data, how do we interpret the existing data? How do we talk about the existing data is already something that could help linkage the economic contribution to the sustainable development indicators. I think we can have a reflection on that as well.
Yeah, thank you, Mari. And Hyung-sik, do you have something to share before we finish our meeting?
Yeah. So as I said, we will send you the feedback format on our today meeting, including your some additional idea about the thematic line, the schedule, whatever. So then probably people will try to come back to you very soon with more structured, also the confirmed the schedule on that, and also if possible with the concrete the item of each session. So your feedback will be very important to finalize that work. So yeah.
Thank you. See, if we have no further comment, I think we can conclude our today's meeting. And before we finish, we take a group photo. So please kindly turn on your camera on, please. And Eating or Sujan, could you help us to take a group photo?
Yes, I'm going to do that now. Just wait. Just give me a few seconds. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you again for attending today's meeting. And as I mentioned previously, the recording of the meeting and the comment or question we shared in chat box and during the meeting will be shared with our members as well. And yeah, thanks again. And we will look forward to seeing you in the next meeting. And thank you for joining. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.